Jingle them bells and frolic. Oh, by gosh, some stolly eggnog.
G'day and welcome. My name's Chris and I'm an Australian who makes content like technology and renewables and things like that. So this video is a behind the scenes one that my Patreon saw earlier this year. So if you want to see more content like this, plus all that other stuff I just mentioned, maybe come and support my work over here on Patreon, where from as little as $2.50 per month, you get all this and a lot more. Really do appreciate the support that my patrons provide, because this video that I put out earlier this year took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and unfortunately, because of YouTube being what it is, the audience and the number of views will never be as great as the amount of work that went into it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and I'll try to be as quick and concise as I can. Okay, so this is the production here. This is the final. This is Final Cut Pro, and this is where the project is basically put together. But before I could get to this bit, I actually had to write it. And all of my videos, except for this one right now, are scripted. And that's because it's sometimes very technical stuff that I'm talking about. It's also not actually the thing that I've studied in my life. Renewable energy and electric vehicles and technology, that's a passion of mine. A very serious hobby is what I like to describe it to people. And it's easy to study, it's easy to understand, you just got to know where to look for it. And so for the last 3-4 years, I've been making videos like this. And when I do something around renewable technologies and renewables and the politics behind it, they don't always get a lot of views, but I actually enjoy doing it because it's good to understand what, say for instance, net zero is, what carbon offsets are, the energy market pricing, levelized costs, all those other things. So this video, this one that I actually made, was actually a 5,000 word essay. And at one stage, this is actually the third version of it, by the way. The two previous versions, one was my usual standing talking head sort of stuff, where I do the news and it looks like this. But then I tried a comedic version, and so I shot a few little segments of that to try to see if it was going to work or not. It didn't. I can't do comedy. And then finally, I landed on this one, whereby I had the voice of the fossil fuel executive as a contrast to my usual talking head sort of stuff. But also then I was adamant I wanted to make a video that was more like a documentary, a bit of an in-depth special. And so I changed my location of shooting. I kept it moving all the time. You'll notice that most scenes don't ever go for more than a minute or two before they cut to something else. Excluding B-roll, and the reason for that is because, well, first of all, I'm storytelling here. It's all research, but I'm actually telling a story about some very significant things that happened in Australia over the last 30 years, or lack of action really, and I want it to be as compelling as possible. And to do that, you've got to find, I think, a very interesting way in which to do it, because if it's just going to be a boring lecture, you would lose views very quickly. You'd lose probably subscribers too. And the premise of the channel, what I do in this serious hobby of mine, is to entertain, inform and educate in a fun way. And so that means, researching, finding out all the facts, getting a little bit of both sides. People might criticize my work, and they do, about your straw man tactics, Chris. You just pick and choose what you want. But when the literature, when the research is being done by the likes of the Australian Energy Market Operator, university energy specialists, people in the field, and they have done the research, and the evidence is there, the writing's on the wall, and they're saying, here's the future, here's where we need to go, here's what we can do now to solve the issues now. It's really frustrating that you've got government who are actually supporting the wrong technology. They are taxing us, and they're not taxing the big guys, the big polluters. They're giving them a way out through carbon offsets. I'm getting into a bit of a rant. This is behind the scenes technical stuff about the actual video. So I'll stop. Just go watch the video. If you want to see what I'm talking about, then you can understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so just a very quick little bit of a high level summary. 5,000 word essay. more than 316 shots. Yeah, 316 shots. You wouldn't know it by looking at it, but they're in there. More than 120 source articles, reference pieces, what do you want to call them, and a lot of work. Essentially, I think the writing would have taken me about easily, I'm going to have a bit of a guess here, at least probably 30 or 40 hours of work. That's because I did it 3 times. There you go. But then the actual shooting of it, that was just over 1 day and a little bit. So I did most of it in the studio, but also did some out in the kitchen area, dining table, set up the room to get this really awesome shot with this very atmospheric sort of smoke and, the fossil fuel executive, the puppet master. I really enjoyed doing that. Yeah, I had a lot of outtakes. That's good. I can put that somewhere. Also did a few in the garage, one of which was actually a pickup about almost a week later after I'd shot the primary shot. And that was because, when my outro, my conclusion, my wrap up rather, it wasn't working. And it's because my delivery for the first time wasn't right, and I'd stumbled and I actually ad-libbed a bit and I went off script, and the setup for that outro conclusion was written in a very specific way to get the narrative and the final delivery wrap correct. And because I ad-libbed it, I stuffed it up. So I had to reshoot that bit, and in reshooting it, I again basically thought, you know what, I can actually do this better. I want to twist and turn Scotty's words on himself and say this is the Australian way, and readdressed it. So that was a lot of fun. I had my son help me do some segments outside, just in the car park. Found some very nice Mercedes that was in a car park somewhere, so I very cheekily just sat in front of it and made sure I hid the number plate so that people didn't know whose car it was, because it wasn't my car. It's guerrilla style filmmaking. Speaking of which, we went to the service station. Also did that too, just very quickly, as filling up my internal combustion engine car. It's like, quick son, just get some video. And yes, I had this microphone on because I had to capture that. In the field, we went to a field to try and shoot, and oh my gosh, the troubles of shooting outside, because the best thing about in the studio, you can control everything. You control the light, and it does everything. You can basically, you won't have interruptions except for the household sounds and the kids making noises and stuff like that. That's very frustrating for me. But nonetheless, yeah, in the field, many times that very short little segment that was actually in the final video was interrupted no less than about 4 or 5 times by loud engine cars. Wait for the car. In the future, cars will be nice and quiet. It'll just be the sound of the tyres on the road, Oh, man. The sooner we get to electric, the better, right? So, yeah, all in all, it was a technically exhausting project, passion project for sure. At times it felt like work, it felt like hard work. In the early stages of it, I came to it, wrote it, I left it alone for a bit. Something would change politically, messaging, reports, things like that. Then I came back to it a few more times. But in the last few weeks, every single day I spent a few hours on this project, and it's taking its toll. So when you get to the end of it, you're proud of what you've done, and you're like, my gosh, I've done it, I've made it. But conversely, you're also like, yep, I'm done with you. I'm really sick of this. And I really felt that weight coming off my shoulders, especially as right now I'm actually really stretched. Not only am I working, but also I'm doing some study, and producing YouTube videos is a real passion of mine. But something had to give. And this one, I really wanted to tell the story. I wanted to tell it weeks ago. But politicians, and actually at COP26, that story was changing, whereby like India and China, supposedly not so much India now, by the way, just to be fair. But supposedly the softening of language around coal phased down instead of end of coal. That was, yeah, you can tell the fossil fuel lobby was definitely behind the scenes there. And I didn't know this before I wrote this story, by the way, that ever since ever, these conferences, so COP, when we think about it, by the way, was the collection of, interested parties sort of thing. It's actually a conference, and it's attended by trade delegates, and there's a trade show. And so you have fossil fuel companies there spruiking their business, selling up their business, but also they're the same ones who donate to political parties, and they also have a bit of a say behind the scenes as to, well, you don't really want to support that now, do you? Think about those 34,000 jobs. Think of those millions of dollars we give you in donations every year. Think about the GDP. Meanwhile, we're all going, dude, renewable jobs are like 28,000 renewable jobs right now. They don't get anywhere near the subsidies that fossil fuel companies do, and unlike these guys who actually don't pay any tax whatsoever. Yeah, it's again, I'm getting back onto the story. I've got to stop. You've heard it a million times. Story is everything. Pretty much. You can do just music videos. They're a story, not necessarily. The Weeknd kind of is. So here's my script that I use for this, and what I did was I just I write it and I'm researching it as I go, and now when I'm actually sourcing stuff, I actually keep a reference list running. So you can actually tell if you look at my reference list, by the way, as to what I wrote first, because the order of these source articles is actually the order in which I wrote the story. So typically what I do is I write the body of the work first, and then when I've finished it and I've got an idea as to how it's landed, I then write the intro and I write the conclusion. Top tip if ever you're doing any sort of writing, to be honest, university level, school level, yeah. So that's my reference list there. This is the actual script over here, and you can see there's actually where it says darkness, music, fade in, overhead light and smoke. That's this shot that I did in my living dining area late at night after the kids were in bed, and yeah, fun stuff there. And I was supposed to sit forward into the light and speak, but actually didn't work so well because of the white balance, and the camera kept on changing, not the white balance, the actual shutter. So I had to basically stay still. And it's like another COP conference and another victory for us. I try to use that other voice of mine. And for decades we've been, this clip here essentially. Glasgow COP26 done, and another victory to us. For decades, we've manipulated governments, monopolised markets, and forged agreements that keep us going, make us richer and you poorer. How do we get here? What? And then I had my wife spin the camera quickly to then have me sitting supposedly, at opposing angle to the fossil fuel executive to talk about, what is what and what is not, and what basically this video is going to be about. Next shot that didn't make it into the final one, and I do this a lot. I will sometimes shoot stuff and I might edit it, and then I go, you know what, it doesn't actually belong in the story, it makes the story too long, or it's duplication, something like that, so I cut it. Happens quite a lot in my videos. So I actually did two different introductions because I was going to produce it as a two different stories, like the history bit, the climate government stuff in actions and policies, and then the COP26 bit. But actually the thread, that there was a thread all the way through it. It was all glued together nicely by keeping it as a whole. So these two different introductions definitely got cut out, but my Patreon saw that one. And then talk about, I had a bit of a think about how I wanted the cuts to go together, the chapters, so to speak, and this is how they looked. In the early 1990s, Labour Prime Minister, and this is how I actually wrote it, that essentially I said there was some music, dramatic block sound, or some sort of thing, on screen, you know, the actual text, and then there's some direction here, and it says studio standing with the number 4 in front of it. Now the reason I had number 4 in front of it was because I had to divide up the filming, and so when I filmed I didn't actually shoot in sequence. I actually shot, you know, for any thing that was studio standing, I did that all together. So here's one of them here, and then later on, just gonna move to a good example. Shot number 7 is actually outside, and then on number 8 I'm in the corner, and then number 9 I'm back in the studio. Now to actually, if I was to shoot it in order as per the script, which actually would help my editing by the way, that make it quicker, that would have taken a lot more time because I would have to circle back on myself and go back out again and all that sort of stuff. No, you don't do that. They don't film films that way either, almost never. And so this was, I had to do it. So what I did is I then cut the script up into, I think, 5 different versions, and each one was about, okay, this is the script, this one I saved for standing, and I preface each of it and I introduce each video like this. Number 6, after having written it, having filmed it, and along the way collecting some B-roll footage like screen grabs from the different articles, things people said, sometimes, you know, the Scott Morrison, you know, this is a pamphlet, that sort of stuff. I would, you know, as I'm researching them, I actually grab them and download them. But then when I edited the story, I tend to find out of interest for you guys, and also for me, because I like watching YouTube videos too, that there wasn't enough B-roll. And good saying whenever you're doing YouTube videos, by the way, is you can never have enough YouTube. You can never have enough B-roll. You can never have enough B-roll. You really can't. And so the total number of shots, you know, in this, as I said before, was 316. 316, yeah. And what I do is, I've got a separate video, you can watch this one about how I manage my Final Cut Pro library. What I do is I download all my screen grabs and, you know, content, B-roll, and I put them all into the one folder. And so this is what this looks like, and as you can see, it's very, very full. And in here, this is just the B-roll stuff. Let's just right click it. 281 items. So essentially the other, you know, 20 or 30 or so were the, you know, filmings bits, using like the Pixel phone here, as well as my nice little camera. Hang on, go get it. That wasn't very good. That's the second time it's fallen over today. I've got it perched on like a very dubious setup, so not a good idea. Yeah. So some of the B-roll stuff, I did it with this camera, and then other times I used my Prima Studio camera and microphone. It's got the light. It's the YouTube on a stand sort of thing. It's awesome, bloody awesome. Thanks to my patrons to help me to get that, really. Anyway, you get an idea, this complex. So my next step is, what I do is I'll take this footage here, and it's going to change my screen so you can see all the different shots here, by the way. I'll take one of these shots here, and I will then cut it into the best best performance. Whenever you are doing talking head sort of stuff, particularly very technical ones where you want to make sure you're saying the right thing and clearly, Chris, I don't know what to say things clearly. I use my best performance last, so I'll repeat it until I say it correctly, as good as it can get, really. So when I'm editing, I actually edit backwards. And here's another video on editing tips in Final Cut Pro. It will help you, save you a lot of time. It really will. These bits here are your primary storyline, and as you can see, there's bits over the top of them. So in Final Cut Pro, whatever's on top is what is seen by the viewer. For example, there's a graphical overlay, and if I was to actually disable that, That's what it looks like normally. That's your primary shot. Then later on to really emphasize a point to help people understand what I'm saying, or to help educate sort of around the differences between things. It's always a good idea to put it on screen as text, so people learn through many ways. People will say they're a visual learner, they're a auditory learner, things like that. We actually have a mix. There's good literature on that, by the way. And so for points I want to really emphasize, I put them on screen. And so that might be, some sort of text like this, where it's like 1 ton of carbon equals 1 carbon credit. And I can edit that however I want to in there, and that sits over the top. And then when the video plays, it does this. It's like emissions removed by an offset. Blah blah blah. Here's another one whereby there's a plane that's taking off in the sky, typical sort of B-roll sort of shot. And this is my first version before. This is the one, not the final, but it's close enough. And you get the idea. I'm talking underneath it, but you can't see me. You can hear me, but the picture's on top, and then you've got the graphics over that. So that's there. Disable those ones. Disable that one. Disable that one. And that's actually me talking underneath it. After I've worked out the primary cut, I've done all the edits, I then go back and I put all these bits in. So that's where I'm adding in either from my collections over here. So here's an Envato membership that I pay for. So I turn this thing on and off as I need to. And, because it costs a bit of money to actually do B-roll, very nice B-roll stuff like this. Like this is a 4K clip of a forest somewhere. I think it's actually, is it a real one? I think it's a real one. I use that. I use some stuff that's free, Creative Commons, so on and so forth. Fair use as well. Yeah. So, if I think the story suits, what I'm saying here is actually a really good point to emphasize with some sort of, nasty looking spewing emissions from things, great. And what I'll do is I'll go plonk it over, me talking. So there's me talking, blah, blah, blah. And that sounds talking about, coal power plants spew into the air, not only CO2, but also particulate matter and things that clog up your lungs and are bad for your health, blah, blah, blah. Probably a very good point there is to actually, play this sort of video where it's looking like that. It just really emphasizes it well, doesn't it? B-roll is great, keeps it interesting, it really does. So after I've done primary storyline, B-roll on top, the last thing I do is add in effects and music underneath that. And so I pay for Epidemic Sound now, basically all year round, and those guys are great in that they actually have some really nice music, stuff that suits my taste, hopefully yours too. If it doesn't, let me know down below. I'd like to hear that. So let's go to the final one. And now you're able to see the difference here. I'll just zoom out a bit again. Zooming it out. There you go. So these green bits down the bottom here are the musical bits or sound effects. And so that's the last thing I add on. And I work, I think I've done a video on that too. So if I have, I'm going to put it here now. There you go. Now, for basically what turned out to be a 30-minute video, the number of hours I spent editing this was extraordinary, and that's because I was very passionate about it, and I wanted to tell a story that was hopefully interesting and engaging for you, and one that made that half an hour just fly by. I've watched it now twice. I do a check whenever I publish my videos to make sure they're okay. And after that, I don't watch them again, because there's nothing worse than listening to yourself and watching yourself. I won't watch this video, by the way. But things like this I do. And, sometimes some of the clips you would understand, well, maybe you do. And apologies in advance if I just actually misspoke, but if you've ever video animated, you know how painful and slow it can be. Let me give you a demo here. All right, here's one example. This graph here, where we're talking about lifetime CO2 emissions by comparing coal subcritical to critical, so basically brown black versus the heli, high energy, low emissions. It's not low emissions, folks. Anyway, so I couldn't find a graph that was good quality. That's the first issue. Sometimes you can find the graph, but it's actually really terrible and it's not very clear, and it's like you're looking through mesh and then you can't read it properly. So then you have to go and actually make a graph in Final Cut Pro. And so one of the packages I have here is this Infographics Builder, and in here you can actually see there's many different styles of charts and things you can do. But of course you actually need to program it in. And so coming back to here to this section where I've got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish elements, yeah, you have to work. You've really got to work for it. So here are some of the controls that I have to use. So you can see the values over here. I've said to it I want 6 little bars. You choose the color. Do they build in? Do they build out? Everything, the value, the length of the thing. It takes a lot of work, and so you can see that I can actually change that. Something like this will take you an hour, at least an hour, kid you not, and it's only going to make up 16 seconds. 16 seconds for 1 hour of work. Time well spent. It's 21 degrees outside right now. What am I doing? I'm making a video. Editor's life. There's another really good example. This will not play very well on this computer right now because it's currently capturing my screen and it's already throttling itself. I can hear the heat building up in the machine over there. But anyway, you can see there's actually sitting underneath it this Envato clip here of definitely a fake forest. It's a nice beautiful forest with sun peeking through. Lovely, love it. But what I wanted to talk to in this segment, in this little bit here, and this is, by the way, only 4.15 seconds, or 4 seconds and 15 frames actually, so 4.5 seconds. I wanted to talk about how our forests actually absorb CO2, and I couldn't find any B-roll to actually do that. So I was like, well, I tried to find a B-roll thing about CO2 release, CO2 particles, CO2 carbon dioxide, you name it. I tried looking for it and I couldn't find it. So I was like, bugger it, I'm going to animate it myself. So what I did was let me just pull one over here. So yeah, there you go. Nice white and red, a little circle, and it goes like that. Okay, and then I was like, okay, I've got that, and let's get some CO2. So there's the word CO2. Let's bring it over here into the ring so you can see it. So when you play it, it looks like that. Now, it's going the wrong way because I'm talking about absorption of CO2. What I did is I put this video together, all these elements. So you've got, I don't know, lots of bits. Where's the count? I'm not seeing it. Anyway. There's about 20 or so of these things that go into this picture, plus also the primary B-roll section. So what I did is I compounded the video, that is to say I made it one whole, and that's what you can see up here in this bit up here, and I reversed it so that when it gets played, it actually goes back into itself. In fact, I'll just play that little bit of the video here just because it's not rendering very well. And so, I think I'm making this sound too easy. This was technically a very hard project. Took a lot of hours of work and truly rewarding, don't get me wrong, and I enjoyed making it. But nonetheless, it was a lot of work. So yeah, if this is something that interests you and you want to see more behind the scenes on what I do, please do consider supporting my work over here on Patreon. Again, you get early access to news, polls and behind the scenes stuff that you just don't get on YouTube. And over there I've got more than like 100 plus videos that have never ever been seen here on YouTube. And you can get this from like a little $2.50 per month. It's like 60 cents per week, something ridiculously small like that. So if you have enjoyed this video, great, thanks so much, I really do appreciate it. Maybe give me a sub, and yeah, otherwise, you be good and you be great.
We dream of snow and stolen kisses neath the mistletoe to celebrate that time of more 2,000 years ago. Ding dong, bells they chime for